May 13, 1944. Fleet Radio Unit Pacific, Pearl Harbor. The codebreaker's pencil scratched across paper as intercepted Japanese characters transformed into English letters. Message from submarine I-16. Scheduled rice delivery to bin, Southern Bougainville. Departure imminent. Lieutenant Commander Robert Williamson set down his coffee and reached for the secure telephone. 3 destroyer escorts would intercept. The USS England, the USS George, the USS Raby. What none of them knew was that this single decoded message would trigger the most devastating anti-submarine hunt in naval history. The Pacific War had taught American forces that Japanese submarines were not just weapons of war. They were lifelines. Cut those lifelines and entire garrisons would starve. The Imperial Japanese Navy's 7th Submarine Squadron had established a patrol line stretching from Truk Island to the Admiralty Islands. 7 submarines. I-16 RO-104, RO-105, RO-106, RO-108, RO-116, and RO-117. Admiral Somu Toyoda's underwater sentries, positioned to detect any American fleet movement toward the Palaus Islands or the Marianas. The USS England cut through Pacific swells at 23 knots, her Buckley-class hull displacing 1,400 tons of seawater. Lieutenant Commander Walton Pendleton stood on the bridge, studying the tactical plot. His ship carried 186 men and an arsenal specifically designed to kill submarines. 2 depth-charge racks. 8 K-guns capable of hurling 300-pound charges 150 yards. And mounted forward of the bridge, the weapon that would make naval history. A 24-barrel Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar. The Hedgehog represented British engineering at its deadliest. Unlike depth charges that exploded at preset depths, Hedgehog projectiles detonated only on contact with solid objects. Each of the 24 spigots fired a 65-pound projectile containing 35 pounds of Torpex explosive. The mathematics were brutal. Traditional depth charges achieved kills in 1 attack out of 80 attempts. The Hedgehog succeeded in 1 attack out of 5. Executive Officer John Williamson had studied those statistics until they were burned into his memory. Cambridge educated, with a mind for trigonometry and physics, Williamson understood that submarine warfare was ultimately about geometry. Sound waves traveling through water at 4,800 feet per second. Target depth calculations, attack angles, the difference between a hit and a miss often came down to fractions of degrees and split-second timing. Aboard the Japanese submarine I-16, Lieutenant Commander Takeuchi Yoshitaka reviewed his cargo manifest. 75-pound rubber bags filled with rice. 9 previous war patrols had taught him that supply runs were among the most dangerous missions in the Imperial Navy. Surface ships attracted aircraft. Submarines attracted destroyer escorts equipped with increasingly sophisticated detection equipment. I-16 displaced 2,180 tons submerged, powered by diesel engines on the surface and electric motors underwater. Her crew of 94 men had survived attacks from American destroyers, aircraft depth charges, and close encounters with Allied submarines. But the submarine's greatest vulnerability remained the same weakness that plagued all diesel-electric boats: the need to surface for battery charging and air replenishment. The American ships formed a line abreast search formation as they approached the intercept area. USS George to port, USS Raby to starboard, USS England in the center. Each destroyer escort swept the ocean with SG surface search radar and QC sonar equipment. The sonar operators worked in 15-minute shifts, their ears tuned to distinguish between whale songs, thermal layers, schools of fish, and the distinctive metallic echo of a submarine hull. Sonarman First Class David Chun had been tracking contacts for 18 months across the Pacific. His hands moved automatically across the sonar controls as he rotated the transducer head through its search pattern. Stop every few degrees. Transmit a ping. Listen for the echo return. The water was calm. Conditions ideal for sound propagation. Temperature layers minimal. No thermal barriers to scatter the acoustic beam. At 13:35 on May 19th, Chen's earphones crackled with the unmistakable signature of a submarine echo. Range 2,000 yards. Bearing 090 degrees relative. He pressed the alarm button and reached for the sound-powered telephone. Bridge sonar. Positive submarine contact. Bearing 090, range 2,000 inch. On I-16's bridge, the hydrophone operator reported the distinctive ping of American sonar. Lieutenant Commander Yoshitaka ordered an immediate dive. Emergency ballast tank vents opened with explosive bursts of compressed air. The submarine's bow angled downward as tons of seawater flooded the ballast tanks. Dive time to periscope depth, 45 seconds. Time to 100 feet, 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Executive Officer Williamson plotted the attack geometry on the bridge chart table. Target speed estimated at 8 knots. Course roughly southwest toward Bougainville. Depth unknown but probably between 100 and 200 feet during evasive maneuvers. The Hedgehog's effective range was 270 yards, but accuracy depended on precise depth calculations and target prediction. The England's first attack came at 1341. 24 Hedgehog projectiles arced through the air in a carefully calculated pattern, designed to blanket the target area with a 40-yard spread. The projectiles struck the water and sank at a rate of 8 feet per second. No explosions, clean miss. Williamson adjusted his calculations. The submarine had probably gone deeper than expected, using the thermal layer at 150 feet to mask its acoustic signature. He ordered a course correction and prepared for the second attack. This time, 3 projectiles would be set for deeper penetration. At 1358, the second Hedgehog salvo scored 1 hit. A muffled explosion echoed through the water, felt as much as heard through the England's hull. The submarine was damaged but not destroyed. Williamson could hear the grinding of damaged machinery through the sonar equipment, but I-16 remained maneuverable. The third attack came at 1410. Williamson had calculated the target depth at 200 feet, but the fathometer reading after the attack revealed the submarine was actually at 325 feet. The Hedgehog projectiles had passed harmlessly overhead. I-16's commander was proving more skilled than anticipated, using every tactical advantage available. The fourth attack failed when the submarine executed a radical course change at the last moment. Hydrophone operators aboard I-16 had learned to time American attack patterns, counting the seconds between sonar pings to predict when weapons would be fired. Emergency rudder hard to port. Blow negative ballast. Change depth by 50 feet. Standard evasion tactics that had kept Japanese submarines alive throughout the Pacific War. At 1433, Williamson made his final calculation. Target bearing 170 degrees, range 400 yards, depth 250 feet based on sonar propagation delay. The England's fifth Hedgehog attack put 4 to 6 projectiles into I-16's pressure hull. The explosion lifted the England's fantail clear of the water. Men were knocked off their feet as the shock wave traveled through both vessels. In I-16's forward torpedo room, seawater erupted through ruptured hull plates. Emergency lighting failed. The submarine's bow angled toward the ocean floor 3 miles below. 20 minutes later, debris began floating to the surface. Life preservers marked with Japanese characters. Wooden planking. Oil slicks spreading across the calm Pacific. I-16 and her crew of 94 men had joined the growing list of Japanese submarines that would never return to port. But Fleet Radio Unit Pacific had decoded more than one message. On May 20th, cryptographers broke a second Japanese transmission revealing the location of the 7th Submarine Squadron's patrol line. 7 submarines positioned across a route that Admiral William Halsey had used twice before to move the 3rd Fleet. RO-104, RO-105, RO-106, RO-108, RO-109, RO-112, and RO-116. Admiral Toyoda's strategy was tactically sound. Position submarines at choke points where American carrier task forces would be most vulnerable. Force the enemy to either accept submarine attacks or divert around the patrol line, adding days to transit times. The plan assumed that American anti-submarine forces would detect individual submarines but be unable to locate and destroy an entire squadron before the patrol line could be repositioned. Commander Hamilton Haynes, commanding Escort Division 39, received orders to sweep the Japanese patrol line from west to east. 3 destroyer escorts against 7 enemy submarines. The mathematics seemed to favor the Japanese, but mathematics did not account for American technological advantages and the remarkable accuracy of the USS England's Hedgehog system. USS George detected RO-106 at 0350 on May 22, radar contact on a surface submarine 8 miles distant. The Japanese boat had been running on the surface to charge batteries, a necessary but dangerous practice that left submarines vulnerable to detection. Searchlight illumination confirmed the target as the George's 5-inch guns swung toward the contact. RO-106 crash dived in 38 seconds, but the damage was done. The Americans knew the submarine's approximate position and course. USS George attacked with Hedgehogs at 0415 but missed when the submarine executed evasive maneuvers at a depth of 200 feet. Hydrophone operators aboard the Japanese boat had detected the incoming projectiles and initiated emergency procedures. USS England regained sonar contact at 0425. Williamson had refined his attack methodology based on the I-16 engagement. Calculate target depth based on sonar propagation time. Factor in submarine evasion speed and turning radius. Predict the most likely position 60 seconds after initial contact. His first Hedgehog attack missed, but the second attack at 0501 scored at least 3 direct hits. The underwater explosion was visible from the surface as a massive column of water and debris erupted from the ocean. RO-106 pressure hull had been breached in multiple locations. Emergency ballast tank systems failed. The submarine sank by the stern with all 59 crew members lost. 2 submarines destroyed in 4 days. The pattern was becoming clear to Japanese naval intelligence monitoring radio traffic in the area. American anti-submarine forces were systematically hunting the 7th Submarine Squadron using previously unknown tactics and weapons. Emergency messages went out to the remaining submarines, ordering them to maintain radio silence and avoid surface operations except in extreme emergencies. But the Americans had momentum and technological advantages that the Japanese could not match. Radar systems capable of detecting submarines at ranges exceeding 10 miles. Sonar equipment with sufficient resolution to track targets through thermal layers and ocean currents. And the Hedgehog weapon system that eliminated the traditional weaknesses of depth charge attacks. Traditional depth charges required attacking ships to pass directly over the target submarine before dropping charges over the stern. This created a critical vulnerability period where sonar contact was lost and the submarine could execute evasive maneuvers. Worse, depth charge explosions created turbulence and acoustic interference that prevented sonar operators from regaining contact for up to 15 minutes after each attack. The Hedgehog solved both problems. Projectiles were fired ahead of the attacking ship while maintaining continuous sonar contact. Missed attacks created no acoustic interference, allowing immediate follow-up engagements. The contact fusing system meant that only direct hits would explode, eliminating false damage assessment and acoustic masking. RO-104 was the 3rd submarine to encounter the American hunter-killer group. At 0600 on May 23, USS Raby detected the submarine on radar while running on the surface approximately 250 nautical miles north-northwest of Cavying, New Ireland. The submarine's radar detection equipment functioned correctly, and RO-104 submerged within 45 seconds of initial contact. But 45 seconds was sufficient time for American fire control systems to establish an accurate firing solution. Target course, speed, and dive point were now known with mathematical precision. USS Raby conducted 4 Hedgehog attacks between 0617 and 0715. All misses as the submarine's commander employed increasingly desperate evasion tactics. The Japanese submarine attempted to jam American sonar with bursts of tuned sound impulses, a countermeasure that achieved limited success by masking the submarine's acoustic signature. Emergency course changes at random intervals. Depth variations between 50 and 300 feet. Compressed air releases to create false acoustic targets. Every trick learned through 3 years of Pacific combat. USS George joined the attack at 0717 with 5 consecutive Hedgehog attacks, all unsuccessful. The submarine's commander was proving exceptionally skilled at evasive maneuvering, using ocean currents and temperature gradients to mask his boat's position. Emergency rudder movements. Silent running with minimal propeller noise. Ballast tank manipulations to change depth without detectable acoustic signatures. At 0819, Executive Officer Williamson began his final attack calculation. RO-104 had been evading for over 2 hours, burning battery power and compressed air reserves at unsustainable rates. The submarine would be forced to reduce evasion efforts to conserve power for essential systems. Williamson plotted the target's most likely position based on energy conservation requirements and ordered the England's attack. 24 Hedgehog projectiles bracketed the target area at 0834, 10 to 12 direct hits on RO-104's pressure hull. The submarine's emergency ballast tank system activated automatically as seawater flooded the engine room and forward battery compartments. A huge underwater explosion followed 3 minutes later as the submarine's remaining compressed air cylinders ruptured. Debris and oil reached the surface at 10:45. All 58 crew members were lost. 3 submarines destroyed in 5 days. The mathematical probability of such success using traditional anti-submarine weapons would have been virtually impossible. Depth charges achieved kill rates of approximately 3% in early 1942, rising to 30% by war's end as tactics and technology improved. The Hedgehog's 20% success rate represented a 6-fold improvement in lethality. But statistics only told part of the story. The psychological impact on remaining Japanese submarine crews was equally devastating. Radio intercepts indicated that submarine commanders were requesting permission to abandon patrol stations and withdraw to safer areas. Morale reports from captured documents revealed growing fear among submarine crews about American superweapons capable of achieving impossible accuracy. RO-116 was running a routine patrol pattern when USS George detected the submarine at 0120 on May 24. Radar contact at 8 miles, surface target proceeding at 12 knots toward the patrol line's eastern terminus. The submarine's commander had apparently decided that speed was more important than stealth, a calculated risk that proved fatal. USS England gained sonar contact at 0150 as the submarine executed an emergency dive. Crash dive procedures completed in 35 seconds, but American attack calculations were already in progress. Williamson had refined his methodology to account for Japanese evasion patterns observed in previous engagements. The first Hedgehog attack at 0214 scored 3 to 5 direct hits on RO-116 hull. Unlike previous engagements, the submarine's destruction was not accompanied by a massive secondary explosion. Damage control systems had been improved on newer Japanese submarines, but internal flooding could not be controlled with multiple hull breaches below the waterline. Breaking up noises echoed through the water as internal bulkheads collapsed under pressure. Emergency ballast tank venting as the crew attempted to restore buoyancy. Propeller shaft bearing failure as seawater flooded the engine room. The sounds of a submarine dying could be heard through sonar equipment for 20 minutes before RO-116 disappeared into the deep ocean with all 56 crew members. For submarines destroyed in 6 days, the USS England's unprecedented success rate was beginning to attract attention from senior naval commanders throughout the Pacific theater. Admiral Chester Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief Pacific Fleet, requested detailed after-action reports on the England's tactical methods and weapon effectiveness. Admiral Ernest King, Chief of Naval Operations, began planning to retrofit additional destroyer escorts with improved Hedgehog systems. But the hunt was far from over. 3 submarines remained on patrol, and Japanese naval intelligence was beginning to understand the scope of the disaster befalling the 7th Submarine Squadron. Emergency orders went out to abandon individual patrol stations and concentrate the remaining submarines in a defensive formation that could provide mutual support against American attacks. On May 26, a hunter-killer group consisting of the escort carrier USS Hogget Bay and 4 Fletcher-class destroyers arrived to relieve the England, George, and Raby. The 3 destroyer escorts had been conducting continuous operations for 8 days, expending ammunition and fuel at rates that required immediate replenishment. Standard procedure would have been to return to port for resupply and crew rest. But Commander Haynes requested permission to conduct one final sweep of the patrol area while proceeding to the port of Marianas for replenishment. Intelligence intercepts suggested that RO-108 was operating in the immediate vicinity, possibly attempting to rendezvous with the remaining submarines for coordinated withdrawal to safer waters. USS England detected RO-108 at 2304 on May 26. Sonar contact at 1,500 yards, target proceeding at 8 knots on a southeasterly course. The submarine was running submerged but at shallow depth, probably attempting to maximize speed while maintaining minimal battery consumption for extended operations. Williamson's attack calculation was completed within 3 minutes of initial contact. Target depth estimated at 120 feet based on sonar propagation characteristics. Course unchanged since initial detection, suggesting the submarine's commander was either unaware of American presence or attempting to outrun pursuit, rather than engage in evasive maneuvers. The England's Hedgehog attack at 2323 put multiple projectiles into RO-108's hull. The submarine's destruction was swift and complete, marked by a massive underwater explosion that illuminated the ocean surface with phosphorescent bubbles and debris. Emergency lighting from the submarine's battery compartments continued glowing underwater for several minutes before electrical systems failed completely. 5 submarines destroyed in 8 days. The USS England had achieved the most successful anti-submarine patrol in naval history, but one target remained. RO-105, commanded by Lieutenant Junichi Inoue with Captain Ryanosuke Kato, commander of Submarine Division 51, embarked as a passenger. RO-105 had been built at the Sasebo Naval Arsenal and commissioned in November 1943. Her crew had survived multiple encounters with American submarines and aircraft during previous patrols. On August 12, 1943, the submarine had narrowly avoided 2 torpedoes fired by USS Tarpon through radical evasive action. In September 1943, RO-105 had fired torpedoes at the light cruiser USS Columbia but missed due to target maneuvering. The submarine had also conducted several successful rescue missions, recovering downed Japanese aviators from contested waters around the Solomon Islands and New Guinea. Her crew's experience and their commander's tactical skill made RO-105 the most dangerous target remaining in the 7th Submarine Squadron. Japanese 6th Fleet intelligence had intercepted and decoded American radio transmissions revealing the approximate location of the USS England and her consorts. Emergency orders directed RO-105 to avoid contact with American forces and withdraw to truck for rearming and crew replacement. But fuel limitations and battery capacity made immediate withdrawal impossible without surface running through areas known to be patrolled by American aircraft. The final engagement began on May 29, when USS George detected RO-105 running on the surface at 21:30. The submarine crash dived immediately, but her position and course were now known to American fire control systems. What followed was a 25-hour battle of attrition that tested both crews to their limits. USS George conducted multiple Hedgehog attacks throughout the night, missing due to the submarine's increasingly erratic evasion patterns. Emergency course changes every 3 minutes. Depth variations between 60 and 300 feet. Silent running at minimum propeller speed to reduce acoustic signature. Counter-detection measures including bursts of compressed air to create false sonar targets. By dawn on May 30th, both USS George and USS Raby had expended most of their Hedgehog ammunition without achieving a kill. RO-105's commander had demonstrated exceptional skill in submarine warfare, using every available tactic to avoid destruction. Emergency ballast tank manipulation to change trim angle. Propeller cavitation reduction through precise speed control. Acoustic decoy deployment at critical moments. Commander Haynes had initially ordered the USS England to remain in reserve while George and Raby conducted the primary attack. Standard tactical doctrine called for the most successful unit to be preserved for future operations rather than risked in prolonged engagements. But after 24 hours of unsuccessful attacks, Haynes made the decision that would complete the England's historic achievement. "Oh hell, go ahead England." The radio transmission at 0736 on May 30th authorized the England's final attack. Executive Officer Williamson had been tracking the engagement and calculating optimal attack parameters based on the submarine's observed evasion patterns. Target depth approximately 200 feet. Course varying but generally southwest toward Bougainville. Speed reduced to conserve battery power. The England's Hedgehog attack at 0736 scored 6 to 10 direct hits on RO-105's pressure hull. A major explosion followed at 0741 as the submarine's compressed air systems ruptured and seawater flooded all compartments simultaneously. Oil and debris fountained to the surface, marking the final destruction of the 7th Submarine Squadron. Captain Marianas, one of the Imperial Navy's most experienced submarine commanders, was among the 55 men lost when RO-105 sank. His death represented not just the loss of individual expertise but the destruction of institutional knowledge accumulated through years of Pacific combat operations. 6 submarines destroyed in 12 days. The USS England's achievement was unprecedented in the history of anti-submarine warfare and would never be equaled. Admiral Ernest King's promise that "there'll always be an England in the United States Navy" was fulfilled in 1960 when the guided missile destroyer USS England was commissioned, carrying forward the name and legacy. But the tactical implications extended far beyond individual achievement. The destruction of the 7th Submarine Squadron represented a fundamental shift in the Pacific War's balance of power. Admiral Toyoda's Operation Go, the planned decisive battle against American carrier forces, had been compromised before it began. Without submarine reconnaissance, Japanese naval intelligence was operating blind. The technological lessons were equally significant. American industry had produced 622,128 depth charges between December 1941 and September 1945, representing a massive investment in traditional anti-submarine weapons. The Hedgehog's superior performance suggested that future naval construction should prioritize accuracy over quantity. British figures from World War II showed that 1 submarine would be sunk for every 60 standard depth charge attacks. The Hedgehog achieved a ratio of 1 submarine sunk for every 6 attacks, a 10-fold improvement in effectiveness. When combined with improved sonar equipment and radar detection capabilities, the Hedgehog represented a revolutionary advance in anti-submarine warfare. The psychological impact on Japanese submarine operations was equally devastating. Submarine crews who had previously operated with confidence in their ability to evade American attacks now faced weapon systems that seemed to achieve impossible accuracy. Morale reports from intercepted documents revealed growing reluctance among submarine commanders to engage American surface forces. Admiral Toyoda's reaction to the loss of the 7th Submarine Squadron was swift and decisive. Operation Go was modified to eliminate dependence on submarine reconnaissance. Surface vessels and aircraft would provide intelligence on American fleet movements, but this required resources that were increasingly scarce as the Pacific War entered its final phase. The USS England's success also highlighted the importance of signals intelligence in modern naval warfare. Fleet Radio Unit Pacific's ability to intercept and decode Japanese communications had provided the initial targeting information that made the entire operation possible. Without advanced knowledge of I-16's supply mission and the 7th Submarine Squadron's patrol positions, the American ships would have been searching vast ocean areas with minimal probability of contact. Executive Officer Williamson's mathematical approach to attack planning represented another critical factor. His ability to calculate target depth, course, and speed based on sonar propagation data and observed evasion patterns transformed submarine hunting from an art to a science. Post-war analysis would reveal that Williamson's methodology was adopted throughout the Pacific Fleet, significantly improving overall anti-submarine effectiveness. The human cost of the England's success was sobering. Approximately 400 Japanese submariners died during the 12-day period, representing not just immediate casualties but the loss of irreplaceable experience and training. Each submarine crew required months of specialized instruction and years of operational experience to achieve full combat effectiveness. American losses during the same period were 0. Not a single man aboard the USS England, USS George, or USS Raby was killed or wounded during the submarine hunt. This disparity in casualties reflected not just technological advantages but superior training, tactics, and leadership at every level of command. The broader implications for Japanese submarine operations were catastrophic. The Imperial Navy had begun World War II with 63 fleet submarines, a force that had been reduced to fewer than 30 operational boats by May 1944. The loss of 7 additional submarines in 12 days represented an unacceptable attrition rate that could not be sustained with existing construction capabilities. Japanese shipyards were producing submarines at a rate of approximately 1 boat per month, while American anti-submarine forces were achieving kill rates that far exceeded replacement capacity. The mathematical equation was inexorable. Japanese submarine forces would be eliminated through attrition long before American naval strength could be significantly degraded. The technological gap was equally decisive. American radar systems could detect surface submarines at ranges exceeding 15 miles under optimal conditions. Japanese submarines required surface running for battery charging and air replenishment, creating unavoidable vulnerability windows that American forces could exploit with devastating effectiveness. Sonar improvements had eliminated many of the traditional advantages enjoyed by submarine commanders. Early war ASTIC systems were limited to forward search patterns and lost contact during attack approaches. The USS England's QC sonar equipment maintained target tracking throughout engagement sequences, providing continuous targeting data for weapon systems. The Hedgehog's contact fusing system represented the culmination of 3 years of anti-submarine weapon development. Traditional depth charges exploded at predetermined depths, creating massive underwater disturbances that masked subsequent sonar contacts. Hedgehog projectiles detonated only on direct contact with submarine hulls, eliminating acoustic interference and allowing immediate follow-up attacks. Production statistics revealed the scale of American industrial commitment to anti-submarine warfare. The United States had manufactured over 600,000 depth charges by war's end, along with thousands of Hedgehog projectiles, K-gun launchers, and associated fire control equipment. This massive investment in specialized weaponry reflected strategic recognition that submarine warfare would be decisive in the Pacific theater. Training programs had produced thousands of qualified sonar operators, depth charge crews, and anti-submarine specialists. American naval schools were graduating new ASW personnel at rates that Japanese training facilities could not match, creating cumulative advantages that increased over time. Experience gained in Atlantic convoy operations was rapidly transferred to Pacific theater units, multiplying institutional knowledge and tactical expertise. The USS England's achievement represented the convergence of multiple technological and tactical factors: signals intelligence, advanced radar and sonar systems, superior weapons technology, mathematical fire control methods, and highly trained personnel operating with overwhelming industrial support. Japanese submarines faced an increasingly impossible equation as American capabilities continued improving while their own resources diminished. By June 1944, Japanese submarine operations in the Central Pacific had been reduced to desperate supply missions and token patrols. The offensive potential that had made submarine warfare a critical factor in early Pacific battles had been largely eliminated through sustained attrition and technological obsolescence. The USS England would continue operations throughout the Pacific War, but would never again achieve the concentrated success of that 12-day period in May 1944. Her name had become synonymous with anti-submarine excellence, representing the transformation of underwater warfare from a contest of stealth and cunning to a technological battle where superior equipment and training determined outcomes. The legacy of those 12 days would influence naval construction and tactical doctrine for decades. Every major navy studied the England's methods and incorporated similar technologies into their anti-submarine arsenals. The age of the submarine as an invisible predator was ending, replaced by an era where underwater vessels faced increasingly sophisticated detection and destruction capabilities. Admiral Toyoda's Operation A-Go proceeded without submarine reconnaissance, contributing to the decisive Japanese defeat at the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944. American carrier forces, freed from submarine threats by operations like the England's Hunt, could operate with unprecedented freedom of movement throughout the Central Pacific. The mathematical precision of Executive Officer Williamson's attack methodology would be remembered as a turning point in naval warfare, where scientific calculation replaced intuition and experience as the primary determinant of combat success. The USS England had not just sunk 6 submarines. She had demonstrated that modern warfare belonged to the side with superior technology, training, and industrial capacity. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, 7 Japanese submarines rested on the ocean floor, their crews honored by both sides for courage in the face of impossible odds. But their sacrifice marked the end of an era when individual skill and determination could overcome technological disadvantage. The future belonged to nations capable of producing weapons like the Hedgehog and training operators like those aboard the USS England.